Taking place in the fictional realm of Dotnia, it is the player's role as the hero to rid the land of a great evil, which is responsible for casting a devastating plague upon its citizens. At the beginning of the adventure, the game presents you with a generous amount of options in which to create your own character to occupy the world and follow you on your journey. Now, the gameplay shares many similarities with the role-playing games of old, such as early Zelda and Dragon Quest titles. It revolves around exploring the world and its many dungeons as you utilize various items such as lanterns, bows and boomerangs to overcome enemies, as well as some truly head-scratching puzzles. But one of the main highlights is the player's sword that can grow to an immense size upon being swung. It makes taking out enemies an absolute breeze, and on top of this, the sword can be fully customized and upgraded throughout the course of the adventure to lend even more power and abilities to the heroes. If you missed this one when it released, if you missed this one upon its release, now is the perfect time to add this little gem to your library. Taking place in World War II against the backdrop of a Nazi-occupied Paris, the Saboteur introduces the player to a resistance fighter known as Sean, who is intent on liberating the city from the clutches of evil. Now, the gameplay takes many cues from the likes of Assassin's Creed, such as free climbing mechanics that make exploring the environment enjoyable, as well as opening up many possibilities in which to take on enemies. It mainly focuses upon stealth, by rewarding the player with many incentives to do so. It is easily the most effective way in which to succeed, but a diverse set of weaponry is also available and unlockable throughout the course of the experience, allowing those who prefer a more hands-on approach to instantly feel right at home as well. So if you're looking for a competent adventure to get stuck into, look no further than the Saboteur. The club centers around a simple concept. A sinister group operates an underground club and forces people into the participation of a survival of the fittest competition in what is essentially an arena-styled shooter with racing elements on top. I know it sounds a bit weird and at first seems like an odd mix, but once you get some time with it soon all begins to make sense. There are several characters for the player to take into the arena, 8 in total that all differ from each other, as well as possessing slightly different attributes, and with 5 separate types of events to take part in, there is plenty to get stuck into. The main aspect of the game is centered around a scoring system, where each consecutive kill that is executed garners a higher multiplier for the player. The less time it takes for you to move on to your next kill increases the amount your score is multiplied by. It's a real blast, and to top it all off, there is a pretty robust multiplayer component that caters to local as well as online play, which in all honesty is where the experience truly shines. Dark Sector at first seems like another run-of-the-mill third-person shooter, but hiding underneath is a genuinely competent experience that manages to stand out from the crowd. Now, what makes the gameplay interesting is the inclusion of the glaive system, which serves as the main mechanic players take advantage of throughout the experience. It takes the form of a weapon, which is essentially a boomerang, and empowers the player with the ability to take on enemies as well as solve several environmental puzzles. The combat system is relatively straightforward, with a few button presses resulting in devastating combos, and once certain conditions are met, a special takedown can be performed, which can help in really tight situations. As well as the boomerang, firearms are also available to the player, which really help out, such as when waiting for the boomerang to return or just releasing a volley of attacks. It is a deeply satisfying system, which manages to keep the combat feeling fresh. If this one passed you by, it is also available on various other consoles, so if you've yet to give it a go, there are many options available if you do decide to play it. Hard Corps Uprising is a run-and-gun shooter that harkens back to the golden years of the genre. Taking place within the Contra universe, the experience serves as a spin-off to the original line of games in the series. The gameplay is comprised of 2 separate modes, known as Arcade and Rising. As you would expect, the arcade mode is pretty straightforward, with it requiring the player to overcome several stages with a limited amount of life and weaponry, but the real meat and potatoes of the experience lies in the Rising mode, which tasks the player with accumulating points throughout each of the stages, which can then be spent on a wide array of upgrades for both your weaponry and abilities. From standard rifles and machine guns, all the way to rocket launchers, even lasers and swords, there is a huge variety to be found within the gameplay, especially when dealing with the on-screen enemies, that at times can be truly overwhelming, resulting in an experience that is not only challenging, but completely satisfying upon mastering its moment-to-moment gameplay. Starting out life on the PlayStation 2, the Katamari series has continued to evolve its relatively simple premise to this day. For many Katamari fans, the PlayStation 3 release represents one of the high points of the franchise, and quite rightly so. As mentioned, the premise is incredibly simple, with the objective revolving around collecting as much junk as possible that is scattered throughout each stage. The experience absolutely oozes charm. Both the visuals and sound come together in perfect harmony, which only helps further push the light-hearted nature of the proceedings. And with over 34 stages to get stuck into, as well as a pretty neat multiplayer option, there is hours upon hours of fun to be had with Katamari Forever. Players assume the role of Travis Touchdown, a rather charismatic character tasked with taking out 10 of the world's most renowned assassins. The bulk of the experience revolves around this goal, but to help break things up, there are several side quests that reward the player with extra weapons, as well as cosmetic upgrades that allow you to customize Travis to your liking. Gameplay-wise, Heroes Paradise truly shines. Obviously, the control scheme differs quite significantly when compared to the original due to the unique setup of the Nintendo Wii, but if I'm honest, it feels more at home on a traditional controller. Every swing and jump feels completely natural, and when coupled with the visual upgrades, it truly makes the PlayStation 3 version the definitive way to experience an unforgettable adventure. Folklore is essentially an action RPG that revolves around two main protagonists. It takes place in the present day after the two characters experience separate events that compel them to visit a mysterious village in Ireland known as Doolin. It doesn't take long for them to realize everything is not as it seems before they are plunged into a separate reality that lends much inspiration from Celtic myths. You have the choice of choosing between the two characters, which both have unique journeys that promote a second playthrough in order to see everything the experience has to offer. But where Folklore truly shines is within its gameplay. With most enemies you encounter being able to be absorbed upon defeating them, it's a pretty unique mechanic which lends the experience an extra layer of strategy, as only 4 can be mapped at one time, with several being either weak or more effective against others. Now, upon its release, Folklore didn't manage to find its feet, and as a consequence it went missed by many, so if you haven't tried it out, it really would make a worthy addition to your collection. Dragon's Dogma sees the player taking up the role of a customizable protagonist on an adventure to bring down a great dragon known as Grigori. The gameplay takes the form of a hack and slash, with its combat system at first seeming quite basic in its execution, but it soon becomes apparent that it offers a deeper experience that allows players to execute more technical attacks. The player is also accompanied by several companions known as pawns, which help deal out damage to enemies whilst battling, as well as hints and tips when exploring and taking on quests in the world. Players can choose from several types of classes for their protagonists, ranging from archers, assassins, sorcerers, and many more that all offer their own distinct abilities and advantages when taking on quests and objectives within the world. Dragon's Dogma received an updated release which is now available for the PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. So if you've moved on from the PlayStation 3 and fancy jumping in to give it a go, you can so on the current generation of consoles as well. Deadly Premonition saw several reworks before its eventual release in 2010. Today we're talking about the director's cut, which offers a few upgrades over the original version, such as improved controls and visuals, which make it easier to recommend than the original. Now the experience is broken up into a series of quests that reward the player with in-game currency that can then be spent on various day-to-day items and essential resources such as fuel. Every aspect of Deadly Premonition is littered with this kind of realism, such as having to keep yourself fed, clean, and even sleep for regular intervals that all impact your performance, as well as the rewards you receive upon completing tasks. During specific portions of the experience, combat scenarios play out in a variety of ways, one of these being to utilize the range of melee weapons and firearms which are available to the player, or to simply hold your breath and avoid enemies in order to survive each encounter. Each weapon has a finite lifespan, which adds a sense of risk versus reward to the combat, where in most instances it is much better to stay in the shadows than letting yourself be known. Deadly Premonition is an unforgettable adventure. I'm sure you will not be disappointed.